Okay, everyone. It may look like a live show on Wednesday nights, but it's not. This is the Unfound Think Tank for, what is it, June 6th, 2021. And this is a public event for once. Once in a while, maybe once a year, we make the think tank public just to show everybody else what they're missing. I'm hoping that this will make some of you who take part tonight, I hope you will consider becoming Patreon members. And like I said, it's once a year, and I try to want to make this decision. And we've had Patreon for Unfound since late 2017, and the think tank has existed for almost 2.5 years now, which is hard to believe. But I know many of you are still not Patreon supporters, but and I talk about the think tank so much on the live show. Sometimes I mention it during the episodes, it pops up. And you're probably wondering, what is that? Well, you're going to get to see what that is this evening for all of you who have never taken part in the think tank before. And so for all of the regular think tank members, I just want to remind all of you that this will actually be a public forum tonight. Usually when we do this, it is an unlisted YouTube link. And even if you publicly, as a regular person, go to Unfound's podcast channel, you cannot find these videos of the think tanks, of all the think tanks we've done over the last 2.5 years, because those discussions are private. Although the guests for the episode, I eventually talked to them about what happens in the think tank. But the discussions for public consumption, they're not available that way, because I want to make sure that all of the think tank members feel free to speak as frankly, as honestly as possible. And some of them, are using their real names as their, username and things like that. And, I don't know how much we want to get into that. But of course, for this particular think tank for David Schroeder, I want to remind all of the think tank members who are now watching, please remember that this is as will be public tonight. I hope, we'll just have to just remember that, because we're going to talk very frankly about the episode that came out this past Friday, the disappearance of David Schroeder. I, of course, announced earlier last week that this particular think tank would be public. Now, probably wondering, well, how does this then work, Ed? Well, I'm going to tell you. This is not a live show, so we're not going to talk about other disappearances. We're not going to talk about disc golf. We're not going to talk about what's going on in my life. We're not going to talk about what's going on in your life. This is not going to be a forum. I know sometimes when I do the live shows, some different viewers start talking about other things, which fine by me. But for the purposes of this think tank, it's only about the disappearance of David Schroeder. So, Sheree, I just want to tell you, if there are any like crosstalk going on about anything that doesn't have anything to do with David Schroeder's disappearance, just delete it. All right. And I know you're in there, Sheree. Hello. Thank you for moderating this evening. So I just want to warn you that beforehand. Usually in the live show, y'all start talking about what's going on in your personal lives. If you want to put that out publicly, that's fine by me. But for this think tank, it's very important that we have a very concentrated discussion regarding David's disappearance. So, Sheree, you have my complete permission if somebody gets off on a tangent just to delete the message. Okay? So what I do, though, is I post it on the page and on Patreon, but for public, everybody could see it. And in the discussion group, we don't just start cold. This is not some sort of cold interview where I just start bringing stuff up. This is a discussion that is very, I wouldn't call an outline, but it's very structured. And that I posted on the page and in the group and on Patreon what I call points to ponder. I do this every week for the think tank. So before everybody comes together for the think tank on Sunday evenings, they already know the topics that I'm going to bring up, and that's what we're going to discuss. I move the discussion forward. I sometimes play devil's advocate. I do a lot of different things, but everybody should feel free to think what they want. There's no judging here. In the think tank, oftentimes we often disagree about a certain aspect or what the theories and everything else. Totally fine. Totally fine. But this isn't something where we just start talking. I have a points to ponder, which is over to my left. So if you see me looking to my left, your right, then you will, see that, I bring these points to ponder. And the way I like to do this is we start out with a very general, and then we get to the very specific. I like to try to get an idea on the think tank members, their own experiences with a personal, something maybe that went on with the disappearance. Do they have any personal experience with this? And then we get into the specifics of that disappearance. So we start once again with a very general and then get to the very specific. And by the time this discussion, this think tank is over tonight, and David's, I don't know how much of there a mystery is as to what happened, but I will ask you your reasons why you think he did it, what was in his mind, but we won't get that to the end. This is very structured how we do this. We do this a particular way. And the think tank members know this. You, the public who are tuning in tonight, of course, have not seen this before, but this is how the think tank is done. So let's get right into it. So I will pose a topic, a question, and then, of course, all of you can answer in the chat. I'll read some of your answers. It's going to be a little more difficult. Usually the think tank has about 10, 11 people. I know we're going to have a lot more than that tonight. I'm not going to be able to read everybody's response, but if it catches my eye, then I will certainly do so. So the first point to ponder tonight that you can respond to is this. Have you ever had someone you knew well change personalities quickly like David seemed to do that night? And I don't mean, of course, somebody that's just doing it to be difficult or anything, but if you've listened to the episode, and of course it helps if you did have to take part in this discussion this evening, but you heard how he seemed to be fine that Friday evening at home with Carla. The call from Robert comes in, David leaves, and it seems by the time David got to picking Robert up, David had changed, whether for whatever reason, and we'll get into that later as well. But to the point that he just blew off picking up his middle son, Devin. He picked up Robert, who is the foster, not child, but foster person that just been staying with them for a few weeks. Picked him up, just blew off picking up his son. So that's how much David changed. Once again, whether it was he chose to do this or there's something else going on. Have you ever had someone you knew well? Whether it's, and please do not say who this was if, we don't want to get into that, but don't use their proper name. If you want to say your wife, your husband, a friend, that's fine. I don't know if we wanted to get into full names here because it's public. But have you ever had someone you knew well change personalities, demeanors, attitudes quickly like David seemed to do that night? And I want to welcome in everybody. I will, as everybody's typing in their first answer this evening, I am going to alter this light a little bit so I can see a little better. And I also read off everybody who's in here this evening like I usually do. Linda, hello, Linda. And Mary Jo. And Charlotte. And another Charlotte. Charlotte. Oh, the same Charlotte. Ha. Paula. CR, good to see you. CR is a think tank member. Crystal, you're welcome. Kathy, another think tank member. Linda, yes. Charlotte. Delane is a think tank member. Twinkle is a think tank member. So we have some New Zealand, whole way from New Zealand. Suzanne, Marlene. Hello, Marlene. Jill, Marta. Hello, Marta. Edna. And this is first time seeing me live. Okay. Louise, hi from the UK. Okay. Who else do we have in here? All right. So Becky's in here. Hello, Becky. Angela, good to see you too. All right. Let's read some of these answers to the first, once again, the point to ponder. And I will read these points to ponder over many times, you will find, as we go through this tonight, just to keep the conversation flowing in case you kind of decide, well, I need to hear that again. Once again, have you ever had someone you knew well change personalities quickly like David seemed to do that night? Jill says, yes, he went to a gas station, lost my car, and showed up 6 hours later and had no clue what was going on. And Jill says Stan was shoeless. And in fact, everyone should know Jill, behind the scenes, she and I have talked about David's condition at the time. And I think, Jill, you should probably add the kicker to that story. Maybe I should just say it. This person took your car, lost your car. That was some years ago. You still not gotten the car back. The person never did tell you where the car is all these years later. So that is a heck of a story, Jill. And Sue says, and yes, myself from diabetes. Wow, Suzanne. Okay, well, I'm glad you got through that, Suzanne. Wow. Twinkle says, I've never had that happen. Charlotte says, yes. Kathy says, yes, I have met or known people who, when they drink to excess, become quite a different person. Belligerent, irresponsible, combative, mean, as examples. Mary Jo says, my brother 54 had a noticeable to me change in his outlook on life. It turns out he had a brain tumor. Wow, that is true, Mary Jo. I've heard about that. Tumors can cause people's personalities to change. Of course, it depends on where the tumor is in the brain, but that is true. Becky says her experience is only with my ex-husband who was bipolar. Yeah. Edna says, just when my diabetes drops, I get very confused. Hello, Marge. Good to see you. Marta says, yes, one had to do with drugs and the other one was bipolar. So we got a couple bipolars in here. Marlene says it's the first time for the think tank. Yeah, first time, just a one-time thing, at least for this year, Marlene, with the think tank being open. Linda says reasons: bipolar, diabetes, alcohol, drugs, and concussion. Jill says, yeah, they never had the car. They never had the car again, but has the keys. That is a stumper, Jill. I wonder where that car went. Angela, yes, in regard to a medication change for back pain and not related to alcohol. Medication change for back pain. Really, Angela? Taking that altered somebody's attitude, personality, behavior. Interesting. CR, my person went from surly to sweet as pie after a near-death accident. Hello, G-Man. Delane, only a few people when drug or alcohol related, but no one other than that. Suzanne, didn't realize the change for days after being in the hospital. Blood sugar was 800. Oh my gosh, Suzanne. Everybody doesn't know it's like supposed to be like under 100. So 8 times higher than it should be. Oh my. Sheree says, your uncle due to a medication change. So we have another medication issue here. Edna, my mom had a brain tumor as well. She would get very confused. She would throw things at her sisters and not ever remember. Normal blood sugar, 880 to 120. Yes. All right. So it does seem, and we have, once again, quite a few people more in here tonight than we do for the regular think tank, which is private. The general question, if you're tuning in late, was, have you ever had someone you knew well change personalities quickly like David seemed to do that night. And I think what we're seeing here is a variety of different reasons that people can do that. Brain tumor, pain medication. The person may just be naturally bipolar, whether it's just something that is first coming on for the first time, or the person didn't take their medication, whatever the situation may be. Alcohol. So we have a lot of different choices here, a lot of different possibilities. And it makes me think that maybe this isn't as uncommon as we think. It seems quite a few people in this think tank, I think a random cross section of the public. We have New Zealand, we have United Kingdom in here as well, not just people from the United States. And seems like a few things can change people's. And once again, I'm not talking about a person just, getting, being happy and then getting angry over something. Something that we would say seems, at least from the outside, to be irrational. That's, we've had people change personalities very quickly because they find out bad news, they find out good news, and they rapidly change. I'm, of course, not talking about that. So in fact, as soon as Santa's saying she has her own personal experience with herself in which that happened due to a blood sugar condition. So have a lot of different ways that a person's personality can change to the point that they're like somebody else. And of course, with David's, we have to remember it was so bad, and it seemed to happen so quickly, at least the way Carla explained it, that within 15 minutes, half hour, 45 minutes, he was fine at home. And then it was to the point he blew off picking up his middle son. That seems like a huge, drastic change. Okay. Delane says, going to a private message you had later regarding personality change unrelated to drugs, alcohol. Okay, Delane, you can private message me anytime. All right. So it seems at least many people in the discussion tonight have experience with this firsthand. And I think that's very important in this discussion. So I'm going to be talking to people. Me personally, I do have some experience myself, but I will just leave it at that. Not with my own self, but I have a little experience in that area as well. And so maybe more people have this experience, whether with themselves or, seeing somebody else have it happen to that person than we realize. But I think what we're saying is everybody's going to be talking tonight does have some experience with this in their lives. Most of the people in this discussion, when talking about David Schroeder and the change that he went through in that Friday, September 21st, 2012 into Saturday, September 22nd, 2012. Let's move on to the next point to ponder. What do you think brought on David's statement that he wasn't feeling like himself? Remember, this happened before the change in medication. This happened, Carla would, if you remember, Carla talked about how he wasn't sleeping well. And then it was right around at least a week before he went missing. Remember, he disappeared on a Saturday, the 22nd. So going back to like the 15th is when he started to say that he wasn't feeling like himself. And it wasn't until that Wednesday, it seems, that he chose to do something about it. And in fact, missing a shift of his work, not telling anybody, he went to the doctor instead. And of course, ended up not doing part of his route, which he got in trouble for. What do you think brought on David's statement that he wasn't feeling like himself? We have to remember that David, as some of you have already talked about, diabetes. I have to admit, I can say this. I think probably a lot of you were thinking this and listening to the episode. He's 45 years old. I'm 50. So he's 5 years younger than I am now. And I take cholesterol medication. I can tell you that if I didn't take it's not very much, 5 milligrams every other day, that my cholesterol would probably be in the 300 something. Why? That's just the way that my body works. But I've been doing that for about 15 years, but I don't have any diabetes problems, but I'm 50 years old. In fact, I think I'm in pretty good health. But here we have a 45-year-old struggling with all these things. So we have to remember bad cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure for a 45-year-old. A lot of things going on with him. So we can't forget that. Maybe had some stress in his life. It seems, given that these bottles were found around the house afterwards, that he had gone back to drinking again, something that Carla did not know that he was doing. That he had been a drinker at one time, but she did not believe it was, something that he was doing heavily during their marriage. So what do you think, in listening to the interview, and it was a long one, what do you think brought on David's statement that he wasn't feeling like himself? Remember, this happened before the change in medication. So it couldn't have been the change in medication that did this to him. Maybe it was that the medicine that he was taking wasn't having the same effect. I'm certainly open to that, but I don't want to confuse the two. I don't want you to say, well, he changed his medication. That's why. This happened before the change in medication. So let's see. And Robin says, my husband was like that with bipolar. He took his life following a long battle. Robin, I'm very sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that. Linda says, change. You believe, Linda, that the reason he wasn't feeling like himself was a change in his sugar/insulin levels. Twinkle. I think he had started drinking again, and combined with his current medication, he was feeling off. So the combination of the legal drugs and the alcohol, the drugs seemingly were illegal. I think he was getting them legally. And then the legal alcohol, the combination of the two, very possible. And it's unfortunately, very common these days, as I think all of us know that, prescription drug use has never been higher in the history of the world than it is right now. Charlotte, maybe he was not feeling right and drank to feel better. Charlotte, certainly possible. I'm glad you brought it up. I think, we shouldn't look at, it seems that he was drinking. The bottles were there. That it may not be that he was drinking behind his family's back because he's a bad guy. It may be that as the reason many people end up drinking, become alcoholics, is because they're doing it to soothe something. So that's certainly possible, Charlotte. Becky, hello, Becky. His antidepressants were not working or having bad reaction with him. So, and once again, I've never been on this kind of medication, but I know that it exists, that sometimes these things need to be tweaked. In fact, the only, I don't even know how comparable this is, but I know in my own life that, being that I have allergies that can be very bad at times, that I used to be a Claritin guy. Going back to my days in Las Vegas, then I started noticing that Claritin didn't work anymore. Had no effect on me anymore. I'd still get allergies. And so then what am I taking now? Something else, the purple box that I have sitting over there. I switched from Claritin to something else, and that does work, and it continues to work. So maybe by body adjusted or something, I think maybe the same thing happens with antidepressants, is that one may work for a while, and then if you feel like something's not right, it may be time to try something else, a higher dosage, maybe a combination with something else. Becky, you bring up a good point. Thank you. Edna, I think it's his blood sugar levels. Another blood sugar. Kathy, his diabetes not being well controlled. He apparently needed insulin. I feel like his sleeping problems started because he was drinking again. Yeah, it's like the chicken or the egg, Kathy. Was he having sleeping problems because of his alcohol and these other issues, or the opposite? Did he have these issues because he wasn't sleeping? CR says, I think he was sad. Huh. All right, CR. Suzanne, life changes, stress, blood sugar changes. Charlotte, CR, I agree with you. I think that something was terribly wrong in his life. Ms. Cat, stress, anxiety, depression. So once again, going back, some of you may be just jumping in now. Our second point to ponder was, what do you think brought on David's statement that he wasn't feeling like himself? Remember, this happened before the change in medication. Sheree says, I think it was a combination of all those things: stress, anxiety, depression. Okay, Sheree. Suzanne, if the doctor would have started him on insulin, he would have lost his CDL license, losing his job. I think I've heard before that. Hello, Paula. I think all the issues finally just caused a perfect storm for him. I write a little bit about that in the blog. And all of you should know, maybe I should have mentioned this at the beginning, that I do write a blog at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast that is available to people at the $2 a month level and above. And some of what I say in these think tanks is in the blog, but a lot of times I will admit, sometimes I hold some things back and leave it for all of you to read in the blog. And the blog has been published. It was published about an hour ago. And I will be doing the audio version once we're done with this think tank tonight. So I do talk about that perfect storm type of idea, Paul. That's very interesting. Marge says, drinking even with the medication, he was is a bad mix. Yep. Yes. I think that is certainly true, Marge. Jill, manic episode, lack of sleep, starting to self-medicate with alcohol. Marlene, I thought it was strange at the church function, dumping the Diet Pepsi over the shoulder. Yeah, well, we'll get to that, Marlene. We're just going to stick with statement feeling like himself. We're going to stick to that week before. Robin, stress at home at work, worsening diabetes, coffee. I'm a diabetic. When my sugar's off, I feel it. That is my personal experience. That's what we're looking for. It was one of the first things I brought up, coffee. So thank you. If somebody you knew well changed personality. So that sounds to me like what you are saying. Carol, multiple factors: stress, very poor physical condition. Yeah, 6'5", 300. Of course, how much should a guy that's 6'5" weigh? I mean, it's not going to weigh 150. So I don't know what the proper weight would be, but surely 300 pounds sounds like a lot. Plus interaction of medications and alcohol. Yeah, Edna, the bottles might have been Robert's. How would she know for sure Robert didn't drink? Edna, it's certainly possible. The issue would be, did Robert have the money to buy that alcohol? Was maybe David slipping him some on the side? Jill says Zyrtec. No, not Zyrtec. Jill's trying to guess what medication or allergy medication. No, not Zyrtec. It's Allegra. There we go. Allegra. Delane, I think he was having anxiety due to stress and causing him to have insomnia, which definitely caused sleep deprivation, which could make us not feel like ourselves. As I will always admit, if there's something that pops up either in an episode, the live show, or anything else, if I think that I'm not qualified to talk about it, I will tell you. I've talked about that regarding, being a parent or children and things. I'm not going to try to tell other people how to do their business or anything. And this is one, again, sleep deprivation. It's tough for me to relate to that because I could sleep 12 hours a day if I not bragging. So seriously, it's just the way I am. If right now there's a bed right here, I've always talked about if I laid down on this bed, I'd fall asleep in 20 minutes. Charlotte, Edna, I wondered that too, if he wasn't really drinking all the time, but was being set up to make it look like he was. Maybe. I don't know how many people are going to buy into that, but maybe. Alice. Hello, Alice. Delaney, start drinking to try to sleep and just exacerbated his anxiety. Yeah. Linda, changes in blood sugar can cause rapid changes in mood and other mental symptoms such as fatigue, trouble thinking clearly. Linda, I'm honestly not convinced he was drinking again. Okay, Linda. Totally fine. Addicted. The sugar and the alcohol could have thrown his insulin levels way off. That's how I understand it works. Marlene, that's fine. I'm listening to everything you guys are saying. And yes, strange behaviors. Delane, I've experienced. It's horrible. Spleen, maybe he had bipolar 2 instead of unipolar depression, and the antidepressants could have made him worse. Bipolar 2 is very hard to diagnose because of the lack of mania. Okay. So once again, what do you think brought on David's statement that he wasn't feeling like himself? Remember, this happened before the change in medication. So a lot of different people in the think tank tonight and a lot of different opinions. I think that's to be expected, but given that many of you have already explained situations with people you know and even yourselves, it sounds that many of you, at least a bit educated, on speaking about this in the proper way. Marta, yes, but many of these things bring about personality changes in the short term. But then unless there's a crisis, which is very possible, they return to their normal selves. All right, Marta. All right. Let's move on to this. This is a very important question. We have to remember it's been almost 9 years since David went missing. But I think we need to talk about this. I don't know if the statute of limitations is up or what, but I thought that we had to talk about it anyway because I thought it was a big point in the entire interview. So next point to ponder. The way Carla, I shouldn't understand it. The way Carla explained it. Of course, we have to remember, Carla was not there. Let's remember that. The way Carla explained it. Did the doctor commit malpractice by changing David's medication? Remember, this happened on the Wednesday before the Saturday that disappeared, so 3 days before. So that would be September 19th. And I will remind you that this was not his regular doctor. The doctor that he usually saw was out of the office, I guess, usually on Wednesdays, doing something else somewhere else. But it does sound the way I would say Carla explained it. David was at work. He decided that he needed to go see his doctor. I don't know if David knew that his regular doctor was not going to be in that day. I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows. But he blew off part of his bus route schedule that day. So already he's in trouble from the Monday. 2 days later, he does this. And to remind you of this part of the interview, because I know it was long, like 2 hours long, you remember the doctor eventually said that, yes, David was there. He was crying. He was, something certainly going on. And the way Carla understands it and explained it is that this doctor, who seemingly had not ever seen David before, did something change to his medication? And is this malpractice? I know maybe hardly any of us, or maybe none of us, are lawyers here, and surely not in malpractice law. But, and once again, it's not something that I have any experience with, but it does seem like it was like, and in fact, I know in one of the conversations I had with Carla that it was almost like, take 2 of these and call me in the morning, which is like a cliche joke. It almost felt like that to me. So how did it feel like? What did it feel like to you? CR saying no, that it was not malpractice. Delane, I don't think so, since she was in the same practice. Linda says, I don't see that as malpractice. Becky, yes, he should have been tapered off the first drug and tapered onto the new med. Charlotte says, I don't think so. Kathy says, no, it was just a doctor stepping in to see the patient. At Kaiser, another doctor takes over for that appointment if your doctor is absent. Carol, no, medicine is not an exact science. There's some trial and error involved. People react differently to meds. Okay. So I guess from a legal point of view, hello, Miss Cat. From a legal, it's not malpractice. But do you think maybe I should have put it this way? Should the doctor have done that? once again, I have just about no experience in this area, but I do know that these types of drugs, whatever they are, antidepressants, mood enhancers, anxiety medication, everything, it's a lot different than taking cholesterol medicine, which is what I take. I mean, conceivably, I could stop taking my cholesterol medicine for months and months. Now, granted, in the very long term, that might not be the smart thing to do, but if I miss my cholesterol medicine for a month, I'm not going to die. This medicine is not that. This, if you don't take it, then eventually things, start happening. And it was just weird that David stops in there and the doctor's like, okay. It just struck me as weird. Maybe that's what's usually done. Maybe some of you know a little bit more about this. CR, I think if you omit the doctor's appointment, he would still be missing. Very interesting, CR. Look at you, CR. Miss, hello. Linda, if that is considered malpractice, no one would be going to the ER for emergencies. Yeah, Edna says absolutely not with depressants. CR says the doctor meant no harm. That's an interesting way to put that, CR. Kathy, sure, the substitute doctor sees the patient's history. Becky, the new doctor should have talked to his regular doctor. Bree, I take anxiety medication, and when I'm up my dose, she wanted me to see her in a month to make sure I was okay. Carol, okay, to do that, but maybe the doctor should have followed up, called to find out how he was responding to the change. I agree with you, Carol, but would 3 days be enough? He's there on a Wednesday, he goes missing on a Saturday. I don't know if that is enough time to see the change. Maybe it is. I don't know. Delane, some antidepressants need to be tapered off as the others introduced, but I think she would have known that with Prozac to Wellbutrin. Jill, two completely different meds impacting. One hits the serotonin, other norepinephrine. Jill making me say long words, but I'm giving my best shot. This has to be monitored. They needed to do a safety protocol, especially with news of needing insulin. Paula, the doctor only had David's account of how he was feeling and reacting to the medicine he was on to make her decision. Delane, nope, 3 days would not have been enough time. Once again, it seems a lot of you, and that's great. I'm totally fine with it. I don't feel insecure about this or anything at all. This is why and for all of you who, of course, are not Patreon members, you're not in the think tank. This is how we do things every week for the last 2.5 years on Sunday evenings. This is how it's done, just with a smaller group. But, we throw these ideas around, and a lot of times I learn things. All of you as a group have a lot more experiences in many areas than I ever will. And so that's what also is so good about the think tank. I guess, once again, from my point of view, but I do not have as much experience as many of you do, it just sounded very, I don't know, the word keeps coming up to me. I don't think it's the right word, but flippant. He's here. He's crying. He doesn't feel like himself, anything. And boop, we're just going to change his medication just like that. Serious medication, not cholesterol medication, not allergy medication. What I would call medicine that's much more serious than that. And just boom, doing it. It just seemed, I don't know, very quick. Jill says most meds take 6 weeks to kick in. Bree, anxiety medicines take a month or so. There you go. Marcus, do you believe that the doctor was negligent? Marcus, I'm just going to stick by to what I said. I think that I'm speaking, Marcus, just so you know, I'm speaking from a standpoint. I don't have I've never taken any of these medications or anything like that. It just seemed very quick. It just seemed to me, the way Carla explained it, maybe that's not what she meant. You heard the interview, that it was like, oh, you're not feeling right? Well, let's just change your medication. Boom, like this. You take that away, take these, boom. And I just don't know if those types of medications should be treated that way. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So there is a part of me, Marcus, if I had to answer your question, yes or no, I think the answer is yes. But as CR said, maybe he still goes missing. Maybe it didn't matter at all. Just 6 weeks and less distinct reaction for it to work. Edna, but when you're going off the depression medications, it plays with the mind. I'm sure it does. Kemoth, yeah, usually with cholesterol, allergy, and blood pressure meds, you can swap it right on the dot and usually have no problems with it. Speaking from personal experience, that's the way I think of these things too. As a guy who takes cholesterol medicine and allergy medication when I think I'm going to need it, the cholesterol medicine every other day. Yeah, but they're just different. Of course, they're all medicine, but they all are, have what they do to the body. And some are much more, dangerous than others. I don't know what the word is. Paula, I see so many options. He could have told her he hadn't been taking some of his medicines, was going to stop taking them. Thank you, Ms. Cat. Kemoth, but yeah, it's completely dependent on the psychiatrist and doctor. GPs, PCPs are generally more flippant with anxiety meds, but psychiatrists tend to make you taper off. Right. And Jill has talked about that with me, that there does seem to be a distinct difference between how different doctors treat these things. Linda, the doctor and the pharmacy have his records of meds he's prescribed to watch for possible interactions. Edna, my aunt's father-in-law was on 3. She, as I was reading it, she deleted it. Go has no GAPs have no psych experience. The lane antidepressants coming. Yeah, and I bet I didn't have time to do my homework on the ones David was on and switch to. Jill saying SSRI to SNRI. Kemoth, general practitioner, what people in Europe call their PCP, internal medicine doc. Yeah. So once again, the way Carla explained it, did the doctor commit malpractice by changing David's medication? I guess when it comes to malpractice, the answer is no. But, as far as maybe the law understands, but does it sound like this doctor took her patient, I think it was a woman, take her patient, very, very seriously and maybe do something that should have taken a little more questioning and time and everything? That's the feeling that I get. Your mileage may vary. Yeah, maybe Cherie did, Edna. Charlotte, maybe the doctor should have had him go to the ER for tests. Yeah, and I realize we're doing this all hindsight 2020. I get it. In fact, all the disappearances, we cover, we're doing hindsight 2020. But there's no other way to look at them. Cherie didn't like your wording. I didn't see the entire question statement, Edna, but Cherie deleted it. Then I'm sure she made the right choice. Linda, I wonder what the doctor and David discussed. Yeah, were those doctors psychiatrists? No, they weren't not. No, this doctor was just a general practitioner, the person you go to get maybe your checkup for the rest of us every year or something. Mara, I've taken someone to the ER for a psych eval, and it's more of a miss than a hit. Okay. All right, Marta. Mental health care. Mental health is lacking. Maybe mental health care. Yeah. Certainly have an issue with that, at least in the United States, Marta. I will not argue with that. All right, let's move on to the next point to ponder. Would David's disappearance have happened if he didn't have his health issues, bad cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes? Of course, we've talked about a lot of these points already, but I'm just wondering, being that we've just talked about his medication, it seems for his mood, his stress, his anxiety, how his personality worked. But what about just those physical issues? Bad cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes. Would David's disappearance have happened even if he didn't have those health issues? Once again, what you got out of the interview. I know none of you knew David. I know you just heard about him a few days ago. Maybe you read up on him, but we sure as heck covered a lot more in the interview than is out there anywhere regarding his disappearance. And certainly that night before has never been put out there in detail like Carla did. But I'm just wondering how much, what percentage maybe, if you want to pick out a percentage, what percentage of his disappearance can be connected to his bad cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes. Of course, 100% being it was the only thing that caused his disappearance, or, of course, down to 5%. It had very, very little to do with his disappearance. Maybe I should have given you a number range like that. Would David's disappearance have happened if he didn't have his health issues? So let's say that he's still 45, but he's 6'5", and he's only 230. He likes to get out and run. He goes to his doctor. Maybe he does have a little bit of a cholesterol problem. Blood pressure is usually in the normal range. Diabetes, maybe his blood sugar is a little high, but it's maybe going to be some years before he really has to worry about its dangers. Does this disappearance still happen? Everything else, though, being the same with the bus driving and everything else. And taking in a foster child, foster 18-year-old, foster adult. Does it still happen? Jill says, GPs, most practitioners outside of psychs have 6 to 12 weeks of training. Linda says, I don't think so. Would have happened if he didn't. So Linda's putting a lot into the cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes part. Okay. Addicted. We don't know if he told the doctor the truth. Very good point. Addicted. My ex-husband was on many different antidepressants and lying to doctors. His mood swings were out of control. 1 minute happy, the next threatening suicide. Wow. Addicted. Sorry to hear that. That's a good point. Who knows if he told them the truth? All we know is that there was a change in medication. And we also can't forget something else, going along with him going to the doctor, is that, remember, even after he left the doctor's office, he didn't go straight home. He went to that lake. Carla got worried. She went over there. She found him there, and he seemingly did not want to say a lot. So there's that. Maybe we need to throw that in there too. I doubt that he would have. So once again, Charlotte putting a lot of weight on the physical health problems that David had. Becky, probably would not have happened without his health issues. So a lot of it seems a lot of you are looking at his health issues as being a major instigator in all this. Okay. CR, if he were healthy, I think he would have been happy. So he probably not have disappeared. Disappearance is 88% health related. CR going for 88%. I like the number. CR. Lynn Swan, Pittsburgh Steelers, Hall of Famer. Okay. Robin, probably not unless there was another factor we don't know about. I guess in another way, what I'm asking is, can his physical, do we know enough? Do we know enough to separate his physical issues from his mental issues? It very well could be that his physical issues was causing his mental issue. It also could be that if he had a mental something going on, maybe that caused his physical issues too. We just don't know which came first, that they happened at the same time. It very well could be if he didn't have these physical health issues. It's very possible. That's why I'm asking you this. Kathy, absolutely. It could have still happened with the alcoholism, accident, wandering off, fight with somebody, etc. I think he was a ticking time bomb. Health issues, maybe 50% influence. Okay, Mary Jo, 100%, because I think his job problems had to do with his health too. Marta, as addicted truthful mentioned, from my own personal experience, people are manipulative and fool their doctors. Uh, Marta, I'm not going to argue with that. There's certainly, to this day, we know all about doctor shopping. And in fact, that topic has come up on Unfound before in other disappearances. I don't know. There's no proof David was doing that. I heard nothing in any talk I've ever had with Carla that he was doing that. But we certainly have had other disappearances where people were doctor shopping mainly for opioids, OxyContin. We all know about that. We know famous people have done that. That's made it into the news. Certainly, that goes on, Marta. Certainly. But Edna says lots of people disappear when they're healthy too. Totally true, Edna. That is the flip side. Thank you. Linda, I also think this had to be with the lack of control of his diabetes because of the studies done showing the effects on the mind. So physical leading to the mental. Okay, Linda. Suzanne, I think a lot of changes was happening with a sick child and 2 foster adult people is a lot. Yeah. There was a lot going on in that house. A lot of things going on. That's why as I even that kind of jokingly at one point, I said to Carla, man, you must have a big house, Carla. Delane, high probability since he had to have been under a lot of stress, being the family's breadwinner and Jacob's health issues. Then made his health worse. Yeah, another environmental stressor. Yeah. Chemo says chicken or egg scenario. It's hard to tell. Chemo, you're right. Hard to tell. Paula, I think he knew he would be losing his job indirectly because of the health issues. I think having a child with diabetes is a huge strain on a family and taking in the foster adults. Charlotte, I believe that there was something going on at home other than his health. Charlotte. Delane and I thinking alike. Watch out, Jill. Linda, people with diabetes are 2 to 3 times more likely to have depression than people without diabetes. Only 25 to 50% of people with diabetes who have depression get diagnosed and treated. Suppose I can understand that, Linda. Delane, and especially given that he had an alcohol addiction, even though he had undergone treatment and had been sober for years, I think, yes, even without health problems, he still goes missing. Okay. Carol, it doesn't seem he was particularly self-aware. He let the stressors pile up without dealing with them. Even so, agree with health issues were the main problem. Okay. Paula, from what we heard about his extended family, he didn't seem to have much of a support system other than Carla. Several reasons other than medical that he was struggling. That's true. And maybe I should explain that just while we're talking. I have to admit that it wasn't until the interview was done and I was putting the episode together, I was like, why didn't I ask about David's side of the family, his parents, siblings, etc. So just a couple days before the episode came out, just this past week, Carla and I talked again, and she was able to explain some of that to me. I hope I got that all across the right way. Yeah. Spleen, not the physical issues, except maybe diabetes affected mental health, but I think he had straight out mental issues, and the stress was too much coupled with medication change. Totally agree with Paula. Okay. Marta says, I learned today from all of you. I had no idea how diabetes changes personalities. Thank you. We're very welcome, Marta. It's the other listeners and viewers who are saying this. I have to admit, I have virtually zero experience in this area, although I had a girl that I knew fairly well from high school. After high school, her mother died from diabetic shock in about 1991, maybe something like that. So I know it can happen. All right. So a lot of you putting a lot of attention on the health issues that David had as, maybe being the main instigator cause of his disappearance. Maybe the physical then becomes the mental and then it becomes a disappearance. All right, let's move on to this. In retrospect, was David not picking that student up really an issue of a paperwork mistake? Or did David actually forget to pick the student up because David had already started to break down mentally? I guess what I'm asking you, is it a coincidence that David missed picking a student up the Monday, 5 days before he went missing? And we have to remember what then happened a couple days later where he just blew off his work that Wednesday. Now, very well may be he did that because he was afraid, if I'm driving the way I'm feeling driving this bus, who knows what might happen with kids in it. Very well could be. And if that's the situation, then we get it. Nobody's going to be mad at David for saying to himself, you know what? I do not think I'm qualified to drive this bus today. I don't think anybody would be mad about that. Although right at that second, maybe a lot of people would be mad, but we also have to look at it from a standpoint of coincidences. Is it a coincidence or not that David not picking this child up on that Monday? Remember, that was right around the time he said he wasn't feeling like himself. Was David not picking that student up really an issue of a paperwork mistake? Or did David actually forget to pick the student up because David had already started to break down mentally? We talked about this in the interview. You heard what I had to say about it. It was a little hard once again, I've never been a bus driver, and I will admit that really did not ride the bus much in high school or junior. I walked to elementary school. The school was right across the street. And then, when I got to 7th grade, because the bus, if I had ridden the bus to school, I would have had to have left way early, and ride a bus for like an hour and a half or something crazy before getting to school. My mother would just drive me to school, at least until I started to drive myself. So I don't have a lot of bus riding experience, but, it seems to me in general that this sounded like a paperwork mistake, but being that he went missing 5 days later, we know he said he wasn't feeling like himself. I think we have to consider the idea that this really was something going on with David. He knew that he had to pick this child up and simply didn't, forgot something. So once again, in retrospect, was David not picking that student up really an issue of a paperwork mistake? Or did David actually forget to pick the student up because David had already started to break down mentally? Because it sounds to me like he was getting the blame for it. Whereas on the other hand, I'm thinking, it's somebody else's job to tell the bus driver where to, where to go to pick up kids, I think. So we got a lot of answers to this one. Coffee says low sugar makes me anxious. Time to drink apple juice like earlier today. You drink your apple juice. Can't drink apple juice. Coffee. I have a tough time with apples in general. They're hard on my stomach. CR says, I think he didn't want to pick that kid up on Monday. Okay, CR. Sheree says, not a coincidence that he didn't pick that student up and then he disappears 5 days later. Interesting, Sheree. Coffee says, I think he started to break down mentally. Ms. Kat says he forgot. Linda, I don't think he meant to, but his thinking was already changing. So that would be the second choice. Kathy, I think he had already started drinking again. Maybe bought the 3 bottles, found something already going on. Becky says he forgot because of his issues. Regardless, that was a good choice. Well, I think it was a good choice on Wednesday, Marta. I think we're still trying to determine if it was a good choice on Monday. Just hard to say at this point because he did drive a lot of kids on Monday, just forgot this particular one. Sarah, God bless him for driving a bus. My kids have never taken the bus. It stresses me out. Okay. Charlotte says, I think he forgot. Suzanne, I think he totally forgot the child. Then days later went to the doctor. I think he was trying to get help. I think, I think we know, yeah, certainly he was trying to get help, Suzanne. And once again, if he didn't show up at work for the second half of Wednesday because it just got to be too much, he was a little worried, trying to make sure the kids were safe, and he didn't think they were going to be safe with him at the wheel, then I think all of us, and all of people who have kids, people who don't have kids, we can all look at that and say he made the best choice. Absolutely. But I think what we're trying to determine is that what happened on Monday too. Suzanne, I think he totally forgot the child. That days later went to the dog. He was trying to get help. Paula, I can go with the fact that he was trying to reroute his bus due to construction, and it being early in the school year. As a teacher, the bus routes are crazy at the time of year, first of the year. And I thought he was already breaking down. Okay, addicted. I'm thinking he was possibly too emotional to think clearly. Hello, Jay. Robin, I think he knew he was at a tipping point and felt an urgency to see the doctor for help and did forget the child as he began to break down. Jay says, glad to see you live. Well, we're doing this is certainly live, Jay, but this is a think tank, and thank you for joining us. Paula, also, I've seen the bus company drivers for messing up routes. They're good at passing the blame. I don't dismiss the fact that he could have called in. It didn't get reported to his boss. Delane, wasn't he just late picking the child up? I remember it as being he forgot. Delane. That's the way I remember it. Oh, it was just late? Okay, maybe I missed that. Okay. All right, maybe I stand corrected on that. Okay. Well, maybe we can still work with that. Maybe it was then just this was a regular route for him, knowing quite a few bus drivers. They don't usually forget their kids. But they do tend to go by if they don't see the child waiting. Kathy also thought he was just late. Wow, how did I get that wrong? Maybe I'm losing my mind. Well, that's right, Paula. He thought he was late trying to avoid the kids across the street. Yeah, because he changed his route due to construction. Yeah, it's still the same issue. He's starting to break down. And Linda says, how's your sugar? Well, I have been disc golfing all weekend, Linda. So maybe that has something to do with it. I could have sworn maybe I just got it in. And I do the interviews. I think I have it in my notes that he just didn't pick the kid up, and that's why the parent was so ticked off. Okay. CR says, I thought it was both late and missed. Okay. I maybe if I got that wrong, I apologize. Of course, being late is different than not picking the child up. But I thought that I specifically asked Carla, we talked about it, and that it was, he forgot to pick somebody up, and she said yes. I thought that happened. Edna says, I thought he didn't pick them up. He missed the preschool pickup. He missed that on Wednesday, but I'm talking about Monday. Suzanne, I thought he missed the kid totally. That's what I thought too. Well, now I'm confused. Okay. Mary Jo says 2 different incidents, I thought. One was late, another was forgotten. 2 different days. They are 2 different days. The way I remember it and the discussions I had with Carla, because I specifically remember asking her, so he didn't pick this kid up, and she said yes. But it was on Monday that he forgot one or was late for one child. On Monday, 1. So that was September 17th. And then on the 19th, he totally blew off picking up a bunch of children because he went to the doctor instead. That's the way I remember it. Marta, honestly, it's so common for the bus not to show in Miami, Florida. I didn't know that, Marta. Sorry to hear that. The parent confronted him and apparently was very ugly. Robin, I think it was 2 different incidents. It was 2 different incidents on different days. But I thought in both cases he didn't pick somebody up. children up or child spleen. I thought it was late, and the parent yelled at him once he got there because it made her late. Kemuth, it kind of reminds me of the skit, Who's on First, Who's on Second? Yes, okay. So maybe I messed that up. And so very well may be. Once again, I can admit being late and not picking child up are two totally different things. It may have to do with construction and everything, but the problem is that if if Carla said he was late, I don't ever remember her saying how late he was. Maybe we don't know. Okay, maybe I've just confused it totally. All right. Well, I thought he brought the child home late one evening and the parent complained. And so Marlene's thinking something totally different. Okay. Let's move on to this. I think we're still going to probably, think about, well, was he late? If it really truly was late, I suppose I can check. Let me see something. I'm going to check this, but I don't care if this is live. Let's check my notes from that. If my computer wants to work, that is. It's so weird. These Dell computers, you let them sit for a while, and then when you got to use them, they take like a minute to wake up. I don't get it. I don't get it. All right, let's check and see what my notes said about that. All right. Now, my notes, of course, I don't have it on things. Okay. All right. I might have gotten confused in that. And if so, I am not a perfect person. Okay. Let's move on to this. Did David really know what was going on Friday night when he was out all night? Or was he in some kind of altered personality state? Becky says, I need a Hewlett Packard. That you may be right about that, Becky. So let's move on to this, to Friday night, which I think is probably the main focus, except for the disappearance itself. This Friday night has to be one of the most unusual things I've ever discussed with a guest on the program. For a father to go out to pick a foster adult up and his son and blows the son off and goes out all night and tries to cause a ruckus at a Hooters, tries to break into that Hooters, and does all these other things. And then when he comes home the next morning, the wife, Carla says to him, and he goes, I was home all night. So once again, did David really know what he was doing Friday night when he was out all night with Robert? Or was he in some kind of altered personality state? How do you look at this? Because we have to remember, this is not something that just went on for an hour. This is like 12 hours. From like 9 one night until 9 the next morning. It very well, I guess, could be because of some sort of blood sugar issue, but 12 hours of it seems a little long, but all of you get to decide that. Did David really know what he was doing Friday night when he was out all night? So maybe, he's like, the heck with Devin. And he's totally in his right mind, takes Robert, goes to the bar, goes to Hooters, goes fishing with Walmart, doesn't answer his phone, just kind of whooping it up, I guess you might say. Or was he actually in some kind of altered personality state where maybe he wouldn't have even identified himself as David Schroeder? We know these situations happen. They are very rare, where somebody goes missing and then they're found somewhere else and there's no explanation as to how the person got there. They're alive and they're checked out and nobody can figure what's going on. Now, I will tell you, what I think about is was it a couple years ago now? I know I talked about it during the live show of this guy was a Canadian. He came down to the New England states, New Hampshire, Vermont to go skiing or something. And then he disappeared. And then a couple days later, he was found in California. And he says he could not remember how he got there. Now, I know at the time, I'm thinking, am I supposed to believe this? I don't know if anybody's written or talked about that since it happened a couple years ago. But I think there were a lot of people who were like, come on, man. You really don't remember how you got from New Hampshire to California? People are very doubtful of this. So that's what I'm talking about. Is it something like that? Or was David Schroeder just being David Schroeder? And he was like, you know what? I'm going to live it up tonight. What do you think? Hello, the Misfit. How are you? Let's see here. Spleen said in the interview, it's around the 37-minute mark. Thank you for checking, Spleen. Paula, he knew what was going on. Altered state. All right. He knew he wanted more in that moment. So we got a difference of opinion already. Addicted. Wasn't it that Carla said when his depression started after he didn't pick up the kid on Monday and got yelled at, causing him to blow them off on Wednesday to go to doctors for help? Once again, the way I remember it, Carla said that he had not been sleeping well and said he wasn't feeling like himself before that Monday, whether he forgot this child or was late to picking up his child. This happened before that. Really sure on that. Suzanne says, altered state. Becky, he was confused and only knew part of what he had done. Suzanne, especially being diabetic, I know not to drive no matter what. Charlotte says it could have been a combination of things. Cherie says, I think he knew, but he didn't want to talk about it. Nicely done, Cherie. Delane, it was bizarre, but I think he was well aware of what he was doing. Not convinced he was in an altered state. I think he just didn't give a crap. He'd deal with the fallout later or not deal, because I think we have to think about something. Is that this is not, it was not Robert's van, it's David's van. And surely Robert was not in control of all of this. And was Robert the one who knew where Hooters was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And on top of that, it does seem that when David got home that next morning, he knew who Carla was. He knew Carla was his wife. So he wasn't so out of it as he looked at Carla and says, I don't know who you are. So I guess that's what what I'm asking you is that, he would have had his credit cards and going to Walmart and all of these things. He would looking David Schroeder, David Schroeder, David Schroeder. That's why I'm asking, did David really know what he was doing that Friday night when he was out all night? Or was he in some kind of altered personality state? Kathy, he knew what he was going on unless he had a blackout. His actions all seemed purposeful. I think he said he was home all night because he didn't want to explain anything. 12 hours of low sugar coma. Coffee, 12 hours is a bit much. That should give him time to correct high or low blood sugar. But if he wasn't watching his sugar, he might not have had it corrected it. Addicted. Maybe he was henpicked and controlled for years and finally trying to break free. Addicted, very possible. I think now a lot of these people don't go missing, but we do know that these things happen. People feel so pent up. I'm not here to speak for David. Easy for me to talk. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. Easy for me to talk. But some people do get into relationships and other situations that they don't. I'm not speaking for David. I don't know. But we just know we're all adults here. We do know that sometimes we paint ourselves into corners that we didn't think that they were going to go that way. And then we feel like we need, they need to break out. That's certainly true. Charlotte, there was definitely something seriously wrong with him. And in the state he was in, I know we can't blame people. I think they should have taken him to the hospital for tests. Well, she was planning to, just didn't get to that. Suzanne, I think a huge question was, is he even checking his blood sugar? I don't even know. Carol, he knew he didn't care anymore. He had started drinking and was breaking down mentally. Deborah, he knew. Hi, Deborah. But thought processes must be awry if he made such a wild excuse. Marge, I don't think he ever planned to deal with the fallout. Marlene, I think he knew what he was doing by going out with Robert, especially after his wife was falling asleep during The Wizard of Oz and she was going to bed. Paula, I just don't think that night had anything to do with his physical issues. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. Linda, sounds like he had brain fog, which is the brain's response to blood sugar levels that aren't properly managed. For 12 hours, Linda? I don't know. I'm not arguing, but I'm just making sure. 12 hours? Edna, he could have other things going on outside the home and marriage. Yeah, these are the things that we know. All I can say is what Carla was talking about the next day or later that day, they're going to this church event. He kept saying something about this is going to make a ton of money. And Carly keeps saying, no, that's not the situation. And then when he finds that out, that's when the Pepsi can went flying and everything. It does seem like at that point he did have a disconnect, but, I got to admit, there's still a part of me that has wondered, was this all just a put on? I'll admit that. I can admit that. And I've said this to Carla herself. That's no secret. It's an idea. I don't know if there's any proof of it, but it's just an unusual set of circumstances, and there's not much, and I know many of you have personal experience, either yourselves or other people, but, for those of you who, have had this happen to you, none of you went out and tried to break into a Hooters. Maybe you did. I'd love to hear that story if you did. I don't know if any of you came home the next morning or something and, your husband, wife, friend, lover, whatever says something to you and you said, you know what? I was here all night. That seems to me to be another step beyond, being in brain fog or having some diabetic issue or something else. Now, some of you are going to tell me that, yes, this happened to you, you did a lot of things that you're not very proud that you did. You don't have to go into that. And then when you were confronted by it, you totally denied it. Then I guess we're all ears, we're all eyes. But I think you have to look at it in its totality. Let's just admit it. David would have, instead of picking his other son up, he went to a Hooters with Robert. That's a fact. Linda, brain fog may last any amount of time, ranging from a few minutes to years. Charlotte, she was getting really angry with him because I remember saying she hit him because of how he was acting. So we really don't know what was going on with him. Kathy, it's belligerence. Alcohol can make a person mean and combative. Sassy, low sassy. Delane, Kemuth, maybe we did. You mean break into a Hooters, Kemuth? Maybe I'd like to hear about that. Delane, I think he was extremely hungover at the time. He possibly could have even taken a drink or two before church. Marge, they had a really good day together. Then he behaves erratically. I think he had a plan. Not saying he didn't have other issues going on, though. Kathy, I think he drank while Carla went to pick up Devin on Saturday. Yeah, coffee. Yeah, I don't think that was blood sugar. I think that's what I'm saying to all of you is that I can, and once again, I have hardly any experience in this area, but I can certainly hear brain fog and all of that. Certainly, and it's real. Certainly real. But when I personally start to think about these things, I think about, well, when he got home, he wasn't apologetic. He didn't see, when he said that he had been home all night, it doesn't sound like to me like that's a point of confusion. That's a point of denying everything, meaning He knew he did something wrong and shouldn't have done it. That means he has a conscience, which, it didn't seem like, he did something wrong. And that then, how can he be in a brain fog when he's going these things all night? But when he comes home, totally deny that it ever happened. And, it's just, there's just something about all that doesn't seem very congruent to me. Paula says, yeah, sounds like a little acting at the church, Delane. I mean, it sounds like he had still been drinking until going home Saturday morning. Spleen, was he ashamed? Did Carla believe he didn't remember being gone? Did he act like he really thought he was sitting there all night? Or was it just plain denial, thinking she wouldn't find out? Well, Spleen, at that point on that Saturday morning, she didn't know where they were. All Carla knew was that Devin was supposed to get picked up the night before, and that didn't happen. And that Robert and David didn't pull in until 9 a.m. this next morning. She asks him, where you been? And he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been here all night. Now, he knows that his son's not there. Does he not remember that he was supposed to pick his son up the night before? I think, I could buy into the brain fog thing to a point, but then at some point I start thinking, man, this sounds like a guy that, to me, that just, as Cherie said, I think, wanted to just whoop it up. And as some of others of you have said, we'll just see. Charlotte says, I think he was just fed up with it all. Delane, he wasn't going to discuss his actions the night before, at least not then anyway. Linda, that's the thing. He was denying ever being anywhere. He may have actually thought that is where he was. Delane, she said it was obvious he was drunk when he got home. Okay. Let's move on to this. So once again, did Dave really know what he was doing Friday night when he was out all night? I think it seems to be mixed. The fact is David never did talk about Hooters. David never did talk about Walmart. Those things were all found out later after he went missing. I think Robert might have talked about it. And, and that's one of these things where I don't think naturally we would believe Robert. In fact, we might even believe Robert had something to do with it. But we know he was at the church event, and we know that he was not lying about Walmart and Hooters and everything else. Those things have all been verified, along with the getting pulled over. Okay, so I think we're mixed in that. I have to admit, I think that he did know what he was doing. I'm not inclined to believe he might have been not feeling like himself and everything else. Very possible. But there's just something about that Friday night that makes me believe that was, it was on purpose and he was thinking very clearly. Now, he might have been drunk or something, but he did what he wanted to do. I never tried anything illegal during low or high blood sugar. This part sounds like mental breakdown, or he was just pushing back. Sounds like a lot was happening in his life. Paula, if he was confused, I think there would have been more interaction that morning. What do you mean I wasn't here? Yeah, that's, and I think I might have even said this to Carla, one of the, the first time we talked when this all came up. It's like one of those things when you come home and catch your husband or wife, in bed with another person. And your husband or wife says to you, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? No, I wasn't sleeping, just outright. No, I wasn't sleeping with her. No, I saw you. No, I didn't do that. That's what it sounds like to me. Not that I have any experience with that, but that's what it sounds like to me. Everything is blatantly factual. There's a person in that bed. You're a significant other standing there, and he or she is saying, nope, I didn't do anything. That's what it sounds like. Linda says, having to learn about diabetes and brain fog due to my father, I can see where his disappearance and confusion might make total sense. You can appear drunk without ever drinking. Mental state goes in and out. Okay. Delane and Carla also said Robert didn't appear intoxicated. Spleen, I think Dave definitely knew what he did. He was denying being gone. I just don't think he was 100% him. Good point, Paula. Right. Wouldn't he want to figure out where he was if he wasn't at home? Thank you, Sheree. Linda, I guess that would depend on his mental state. Delane says, per Shaggy, it wasn't me. Yeah. All right. So I think we're quite divided on that topic, it seems to me. I think a majority of you think he did know what he was doing that night, but you're maybe saying that he was doing that, but with also brain fog. I have to admit, I'm not quite as sure. Okay. Did David plan to walk off well before he ever got brought home that day from the church event? Meaning, was this something that he was planning to leave, and this was just the opportunity to present it itself that day, September 22nd, 2012. Now, we have Coffee Lover says, in denying where he was, sounds like he was gaslighting his wife. That's a great word to use, Coffee. If anybody doesn't know what that is, you can look it up. Yeah. Once again, did David plan to walk off well before he ever got brought home that day from the church event? And we have to remember something. I think this is a very important part, although I only touched upon it. I only mentioned it a little bit earlier, is that day that he went to the doctor, he did not come home, at least right away. He was supposed to be on his way home. Remember, bus company called, where's David? Yada, yada, yada. Then the doctor calls Carla, says, hey, David was here, but he's not home yet. Carla goes out to find him. She finds him at the lake. David doesn't say much. So, we start thinking, well, what would have happened if Carla hadn't gone out? What if she had just stayed home? Would David have come home? Would have something happened there? Would he have parked his car and jumped into the lake, or walked off, or driven away? And, with this disappearance 9 years later, David and his car are missing instead of just David missing. Because it does seem, you start talking about some person who's sitting in a parking lot of a lake by himself or herself. And when somebody comes upon that person, the person doesn't have a lot of explanations. You heard it yourself, what Carla said. It could lead you to believe this person was thinking about doing something. It's probably nothing good. So that's why I'm asking you, did David plan to walk off well before he ever got brought home that day from the church event? You have all these things. That week seemed like a lot was going on. Kathy is saying no, that he did not plan to walk off well before. Suzanne says no. CR, no, he could have left any time. Becky, his mental state made him walk off. Paula, yes, I think he would have been gone the day after the doctor visit, except she found him. Linda, I don't think he knew he was going somewhere. His mind was gone. I agree with Paula. Sheree says, Jill, I think he was trying to make a good day for everyone, and his ultimate plan was completing suicide. Addicted, yes. Maybe mom helped them. Yeah. Linda, if he planned to go somewhere, he would have been most likely taking personal belongings like wallet, etc. Delane, I don't think he planned it. Carla dropped him at home. He was mad about that. He left. He was possibly still somewhat intoxicated. He only had about 3 hours of sleep after drinking all night long. Okay, Delane. So maybe he just went to the lake to relax. I do. Totally possible, CR. It's just the problem, at least, none of us were there. Carla was the only person that was there. I think maybe Robert was with her. But I'm not saying it didn't happen. It's just she didn't say that. What did David say? You heard her. Well, she didn't say much. He didn't say, honey, I'm just sitting here taking a little time, relaxing. He didn't say anything like that, but that very well may be. Copy. He had so many pressures, and I think he wanted to get away from it all. His job was in jeopardy. He was impacted by this in a significant way. I think that's highly possible. Copy. CR could have found another job or maybe received disability. Yeah, possible. CR. Spleen. He sought help. If he wasn't already on meds, it would have seemed it could have all been planned, but it had been on them for years and they got changed. I think he wasn't himself and in the moment walked off. Okay. Delane, I wonder where his family does live. Well, I think his mother is now deceased. I think she's died since 2012, and he has this brother who lives in Kansas City. They tracked him down, and I don't think David ended up there. In fact, to hear Carla tell it, they didn't have much of a relationship. Jill, being on meds doesn't stop anyone from doing that. If he wasn't getting help outside of medication, completely possible. Charlotte, doesn't his mom live in the same town? I do, but I think she did. Yes, she did. And you heard what she said. She didn't seem, she seemed to be very needy. I will tell you that the conversation I had with Carla about David's family was a lot longer than what I said. I just didn't know if he wanted to get on all of it. I don't know how much it really has anything to do with the disappearance. It just doesn't sound to me like the mother was a very good person. She was very needy, very demanding, very much, what have you done for me lately? Like Janet Jackson. What was his job when school was out? Never asked that, CR. Valerie, Valerie, you missed a lot, Valerie. Unfortunately, we're getting here toward the end. You'll have to start from the beginning. Yes. So once again, did David plan to walk off well before he ever got brought home that day from the church event? Some of you, Paula, Shri, maybe a couple others are saying yes, but many of you are saying no, that it was just something that presented itself maybe because Carla brought him home for this event that he wanted to be at. And you have to remember something else, though. If he really wanted to stay at that event, he really could have. I mean, he was 6'5", 300 pounds. I mean, really, what's Carla going to do? Shoot him with the tranquilizer gun, knock him out, everybody throw him in the car and drive him home. He did go home with her. It's, like she dragged him home, although she did say that he couldn't walk very well. That's something, that does occur to me. If he didn't want to go, he wouldn't not. Might have been a huge scene instead of what it was. Maybe the cops would have got called. But we do have to remember that he did, there was no outside forces dragging him to take. He decided to go home, even though, once again, he's 6'5", 300 pounds. I don't know how many people could have made him do anything. Delane, I was just curious. I saw that his mother was listed as surviving Jacob in his obit. Yeah, I bet Delane, I don't think she's with us anymore. I think she's deceased now. Of course, David disappeared 2012. Jacob died 2015. But I think she died between then and now. Charlotte says, I think it was a spur of the moment thing. Paula, I think he didn't have much of a window to walk off. That's why he misbehaved at the church. So you're saying he wanted to get home before his older son got home. Okay, Paula. Linda, any chance we can get just together for you to ask his wife? Well, I will do a follow-up call with her. Any chance we can... I'll go through all of Linda with every think tank that I do. I go through it with the guests. So, and of course, since this is public, she's maybe going to watch it anyway. Marge, it is odd that he couldn't walk out of the church, but he was able to walk away from the house. Marge, I agree with you. It's something that sticks out to me too. Thank you for bringing it up. And that's why I have to admit that there's a part of me that continued to believe it was all put on. Me. I'm not telling you we don't do judging of each other's statements and we don't argue about theories here. But I'm just telling you. Delane, it was kind of odd that she told him on the way home that he blew his chance to hang out at the carnival. I thought it was an odd thing to say to a spouse. Probably Delane, but I'm going to give her a break. I don't know how any of us would act in this particular situation. And, those preceding 12 hours had to be some of the most bizarre of Carla's life. Nina, awesome. Hello, Nina. Edna, is there a chance he started a new life? Well, that new life would have had to have started by getting some more medication, Edna. If he was going to do that, he would have had to done that. And that's what makes this very, very unlikely that he would be able to do that. He would have to add a fake ID and everything else. And he would have had to have done it in a very, very quick amount of time. Very short amount of time. Charlotte Delane, I agree. There was much that was confusing about all that to me. Suzanne, sounds like Carla talked to him like a child, not her husband. Well, once again, I'm not going to judge her because I've never been in that situation. I know a lot of you maybe just don't want to do it. And frankly, he was acting like a child. He was. Kathy, Edney, he couldn't have lived without his diabetic meds, Marge. Unless he had a ride, it seems he walked away pretty quickly. Spleen. But I don't think he was himself or was acting. He did the things that could have gotten him arrested. Anyone who is coldly calculating things would not take that chance, though, right? But I don't think he was himself. But Spleen girls, once again, I don't think he was himself or was acting. He did these things that could have gotten him arrested. Anyone who is coldly calculating things would not take that chance, though, right? You may have a point about that, Spleen. You mean as far as breaking into Hooters or him trying to swipe do what he did? I think we have to look at it this way, Spleen. I'm going to guess that not every drunk, if he was drunk or whatever he was, in a Hooters, in an Applebee's, in a bar, in an Outback or any place like these, if somebody gets belligerent, I don't think the cops get called every time. Because I think if they did that, the cops would be there all the time and they'd just have cops sitting out in the parking lot. So that is something that occurs to me, Spleen. And as far as him trying to get back in, it very well may be that he was trying to do that. And Robert, led him away. And they were like, okay, this kid got a hold of him and they're just rushing him into the car and we're not going to do anything about it. Not to mention if they call the cops, then they have to stick around. The cops show up there. Instead of everybody getting to go home, they have to wait till like 3:30, 4 in the morning. They have to make statements. I think in general, you're probably right, Spleen, but I could certainly see a situation where a lot of times maybe cops don't get alerted to these types of cases or types of situations, drunks and things. If he was drunk. Marge said she said he was behaving like a child. Yes. Linda, I wonder if he hopped a train that was moving slow, dying on the train. Well, Linda, maybe, but and then we have to try to. Well, he couldn't walk on one hand, but he's running to catch up to a train and jump on. I'm not saying it's impossible. We're just gonna have to figure out a way for that to all be congruent. Delane, he probably walked off because he was angry, but I think his health would have hindered him greatly. Kathy, Linda, could Jabe have jumped on a train at his weight? Edna, she said she took both sets of keys, but later she said he left his keys. Okay. Linda, if it was moving slow, sure. Not if it was moving fast, though. Keels. I wonder if Robert was getting him drugs. Well, that would have had to have been something that happened very, 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 very quickly, because Robert was only there a few weeks. I'm not saying it's impossible. But there's no indication that Robert was doing any drugs. He was trying to buy cigarettes for underage kids at that football game, but and I know Robert has become a very bad person who's very familiar with the jail system in Wisconsin. But there's nothing that I have from Colorado anywhere else that he was into doing drugs and things. But like I said, if it happened, it had to have happened very quickly within just a few weeks. Kathy, Carla said she took both sets of keys, left his cell phone. Charlotte, Keel, I wondered about Robert too. A lot of suspicions on Robert. But I just want to state this for a record. He was at the church event when David walked off from the house. Spleen, we could talk, we're not going to, but we could talk about Robert and, why he was going along with David that whole night and everything that was going on. But as Carla said, Robert did have some developmental issues where he might have been 18, but he had the maturity of a 13-year-old, and he might have just thought, man, this is the greatest time in the world. Look, I got taken in by this family, and this guy's taking me all night. We're going to Hooters and fishing and everything else. Kathy said she found the wallet in the back of the vehicle, right? Okay. All right. So once again, did David plan to walk off? Well, before, some of you are saying yes, many of you are saying no, kind of be split on that. My belief is that he had planned to do this for a while. I think he might have done it on the Wednesday, and then Saturday rolled around and that he took his opportunity. My belief. All right, let's move on to this. Last question, last point to ponder before we wrap up this public think tank. In David's mind, where was he going when he walked off? Where was he going? I realized that, that's even why we talked about it in the interview. I did ask Carla, well, I'm sure people thought maybe you did something to him. We talked about that a little bit. I guess if you really, 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 really want to be suspicious, I think maybe did the older son do something to him? Did something happen in that time frame? Could they have gotten into a fight and the oldest son who came home killed him and then was able to cover it all up? This stretches my imagination, challenges my imagination quite a bit. I don't know if there's any facts to dispute it or support it. Doesn't seem like a lot of time to do something like that. So that's why I'm just sticking to him walking off. In David's mind, where was he going when he walked off? Was he walking out of his life? Did he have an idea that he was going to go commit suicide somewhere? Did he not really know? Did he not even know what he was doing? He was just kind of, I don't know, out of his mind, just kind of walking off. What was in David's mind? Where was he going when he walked off? Mary Jo says, I thought the train was parked there for an hour every day. It was there. It just depends what time he would have gotten there. If you want to entertain the idea that he hopped on one of those trains, Mary Jo, you can. Still comes, it's hard to explain how maybe when it was stopped, he climbed on. Maybe, but there's no proof that he even knew that train was there. Mary Jo, that would be the counter argument to that. Linda, he left, but how far would he have had to walk to be out of sight? Not very far. Delane, I think Carla just meant he left his cell and wallet, and of course he left his keys because she had them. Becky, he was confused. He was too confused to have a plan where to go. CR, I think we would be remiss to not think of Carla unless we 100% know she's not a suspect. Don't yell at me. Otherwise, I think he left to get more booze if he was drinking. CR, I get what you're saying. That's exactly why I brought it up. It's for all of you to decide. That's why, I brought it up that, she has been questioned, as you might expect. I know that if you've searched the internet hard enough, you're going to find things about being suspicious of Carla, if only for the reason that she was the last person. She and he were together. She comes back to the church event, then goes home. He's not there. And surely if it was the opposite, if it wasn't David Schroeder who disappeared and it was Danielle Schroeder, instead of Carla Schroeder, it was Carl Schroeder, then yes, this would be a totally different conversation. And that's kind of my point. This is why this disappearance is so important. The way I see it is because that's what we would think. But I think what we've proven here is it does happen that people do walk off spur of the moment, or they're planning to. And as soon as they get home, spouse leaves, gone. And maybe we should consider this more than just thinking, because let's be honest about this. The reason we end up suspecting a lot of spouses, usually men, is because their stories don't make a lot of sense. We could bring up Angela Green, Jeff Green, saying, yeah, I took her to a psychiatric hospital, but I'm not going to tell you which one. And, she died in the psychiatric hospital, but there's no death certificate, on and on and on. It's one of the main reasons that everybody suspects that he killed her. And then later he changes his story. Marion Hurley's husband, he's cheating on her. She catches him. And they allegedly go camping. She disappears. But the reason that we think that he did something to her is because of her stories, his story. Oh, yeah, she was at the golf course. She got in a truck with somebody and they just took off. I don't know who it was. Whereas Carla's not saying that. She's not, saying that, yeah, we came home, we hung out for a little bit, and then he got in a truck and went off. Now, if she said that story, none of us would believe that, would absolutely think that she had something to do with this. None of us would believe that. So and then we have to put this all together with what he did the night before and acting erratically and not very logically and everything. So it seems that he was certainly capable of taking off at any time. Charlotte says maybe he had a secret friend that he had set up in advance to come and get him and take him someplace. Charlotte, if there was proof of that, you think we would have found that by now. There's nothing, he had a cell phone and, if he had a secret friend, we also then have to put that with everything else. We just can't, look at that in a vacuum. Then we have to go to the night before. We have to go back to the doctor's visit, which happened. The call to Carla happened. I'm not saying I don't know. I don't know what his personal life was otherwise. He very well been cheating on Carla, but there's no proof that he contacted anybody, called anybody or anything, and his phone was there. So Schroeder says that he was walking to the lake. Okay. Kathy, I think he was trying to go back to the church to help Jacob, but the church was 5.8 miles east. I doubt he could have walked more than 2 miles. That's kind of what's gone through my mind too, Kathy. CR, there's nothing worse than running out of drink. Suzanne, I think he was just mad and started walking and something health-wise happened. Nina, yes. I don't know what that means, Nina. Delane, I think the church is plausible. And the lake where he fished is possible. Also possible he didn't really have a destination, just mad, still a little drunk, and just left. Keel says, I'm holding some of my thoughts back. Okay, Keel. You're allowed to do that. In his condition, he might have had a heart attack, stroke, sugar drop. His body might be lying somewhere. Sheree, for me, it was easy to rule Carla out because she was seen at the church, and then the cops were at the house 2 hours later, so she wouldn't have had time to make him disappear. Yeah, what's she going to do? What'd she do? Get her, sons to help her and all this? It's, addicted. Where does a man that big who can't walk off to never be seen again? Well, 6'5", 300 pounds is certainly big addicted, but when it comes to search purposes, 6'5", 300 pounds is not much bigger than what I am, 5'9", 170, about 8 pounds. Although after the disc golf tournament today, I did weigh 176.6. Yes, 6'5", 300 is much bigger than I am, but you throw each of our bodies in a square mile area, it's going to be equally hard to find both. So, You could even, a woman that's 5'2", 115 pounds. She's just going to be as hard or easy to find as a 6'5", 300 guy. Once again, when you start taking in a large area. Linda, just a side note, I hope everyone that is new tonight will join us next week. This has been a great discussion. Yeah, patreon.com/unfound podcast if you want to join the think tank. Once again, in David's mind, where was he going when he walked off? It seems like we have a split decision on this. I think it would make sense that he was so ticked off about being taken away from the church that he's tried to, in his mind, tried to walk back to it. I think that makes some sense, being that he was at the lake 3 days before that, pondering something. That makes a lot of sense. The issue for me is an issue of not being seen on a Saturday afternoon walking anywhere. I mean, really, how fast could he walk? Or run? Couldn't. This is why I've convinced myself that he did walk straight across that street, as I showed in the video, past that neighbor's house and onto the tracks. Of course, we got trees that would hide him, and he would be able to go whatever direction he wanted. Now, maybe he had plans to walk those tracks to the church. I don't know if he could do that or not. But I'm inclined to believe that he was just taken off because there is a large party that believes that a lot of this was a show. I don't believe that his health issues were a show and everything else, but I can't get past the idea that whole night before was just like kind of a going away party. Can't get away from that. Delane, yes, he was a very large man to intentionally make disappear in a short period of time. Polly, he just wanted to go anywhere but home. Linda, might be a long shot, but did they check the train times and routes? Not sure if they were more local or national routes. Well, we talked about that a little bit, Linda, that there was a train that would be parked down the tracks a mile or so around a certain period time of day. And could he have walked to it? I suppose. What kind of train was it? I mean, what did he do? Usually those, I think it was just like the engine or something. I mean, really, if he got into the engine, wouldn't the person who came along to get it to take it somewhere notice he was there? And if he was, usually those box cars, I know they're how it's portrayed in movies and everything. Usually those things are locked. Not to mention he's 6'5", 300 pounds, and and there's no proof that he even knew. Of course, he knew the train tracks were there. But did he know that there was a train that was parked down the tracks there? And I think jumping on a train, although once again, it's portrayed in a lot of movies like Midnight Run, but you don't want to try to do that. I mean, in his wrong mind, he, maybe tried to do it, but then his remains would have been found if he was unsuccessful. That's the way I look at it. Charlotte, I wonder why they haven't found his body yet if he died. Well, we've been through that many times on all sorts of cases. Most, like Jason Landry. How far could he have gone? His car was wrecked. He was driving it. His clothes were there. His stuff was there. Not found. It's a big mystery. Big mystery, Charlotte. Shri, him walking off is similar to the way his brother and mother behave. Checked out. Yeah, interesting, Shri. Kathy, sorry, so many remains are found by luck. Yep, even in areas that were already searched. Totally true. Maybe took a bus. Just kidding. Charlotte, it's true, Kathy. Delane, yes, his mother was apparently very detached, so he was probably feeling detached himself. Yes. So we have some different choices there, including maybe he didn't know where he was going. He was just taken off. He was so ticked off at Carla and wasn't in his right mind, maybe still drunk. Maybe he wanted to go whoop it up again like he did the night before. I think there are a lot of possibilities. I'm open to a lot, but you can read the Patreon blog at patreon.com/unfound podcast if you'd like to hear my complete thoughts or read my complete thoughts. Charlotte, so I'm going to have to listen to the podcast again, do so many times, Charlotte. And yeah. All right. So that is the think tank. See, this is how we do the think tank. 2 hours went by just like that. that is the think tank. For all of you who are getting to watch for free tonight, that's how we do things, but in a much smaller group. Usually we're able to do the think tank. We usually have 11, 12, 13 people, and we can get it done in like an hour and a half, something like that. But being we have more people, more comments, I want to make sure that everybody comments got read. So this is a little longer than usual, more like a length of a live show. But this is what we do. So if this sounds interesting to you, if it looks interesting to you, if you want your opinions to make a difference, then you should consider joining at patreon.com/unfound podcast at the premium Patreon level and join us every Sunday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern, when we talk in depth about the disappearance for that week. And of course, in those situations, it's very private and the link is not given out to the public and they do not have access to it. So it's a lot more private than this. However, what the other tradition is here at the think tank, I always let the think tank members know what the next episode is going to be. So all of you can start doing what you'd like as far as reading up on this next disappearance. And the next disappearance is Friday. I'm going to do the interview on Tuesday. Is the disappearance of Chance Engelbert, Englebert. So you can look that one up. Start reading about that. And that will be coming out this coming Friday, working on some other things, of course, as you saw in the newsletter. Eric, you're very generous. Wow, a contribution to a think tank. That is a first, Eric. Thank you very much. We at Unfound deeply appreciate it. You're very generous. Thank you. Thank you. So if you'd like to join the think tank on Sunday evenings, patreon.com/unfound podcast. So you now know if you ever hear about the think tank again, you know what it is, but hopefully you can just find out firsthand because you become a member. That's all I got. As Sheree always reminds me to say, because she types it after the live shows, everybody keep your head on a swivel out there. Be aware of your surroundings. And thank you for joining all of us, the think tank members, you, the public. Thank you for joining the think tank members and myself for this very special occasion on June 6th. 2021. All of you will see me again on Wednesday night for the live show, 9 p.m. Eastern. Good night. Good talking to all of you. Thank you so much for all of your opinions and theories. Great job, everyone. Good night.